Okay, now we're getting to deferred salaries, which if you decide to do a SAG after contract, puts us in the same neighborhood as a right to work state. Listen to this carefully now. You are able to defer payment to your performers under the SAG after new media agreement if your performers agree to the deferral. A deferral in payments means that you agree to make X payment when Y happens. Example, a producer agrees to pay all principal performers $100 a day of work performed if and when the production receives DVD distribution, and after the producer recoups production costs of $5,000. When deferring payment to the performer, the payments that you have to make, the pension and health payment, that 18%, will also be deferred until the performer's payment is triggered. So if you can get an agreement from your actors to defer these payments, then you can get away with, in your budget, not paying actors right away. But the second you sell or make an agreement with somebody that is a payable subscription process, like maybe Spotify or Audible, as soon as you do that, you got to pay the actors. But if you're going to be just putting it up on, say, PRX or on your own somewhere on YouTube or whatever that isn't a payable thing, then you're fine. But as soon as that crosses the line of commerce, actors have to be paid. Okay, so it kind of is, if you want to level up, and you want to get bigger actors in your productions, do this, and you still might be able to defer their salary as well, if they agree that you have a good business plan and whatnot. Okay, that's the end of my TED Talk for the moment, until we get to questions, and then we'll probably cross over in a conversation here. So next up is Bonnie.
Hey, so I'm actually going to ask you a question going off of one thing that you were saying. So I'm from the video game verse, but I also work in audio drama and audio fiction. And I know I've looked through the SAG sites before for various things, and there's new media, which you're talking about specifically for this con, which is audio drama, audiobooks based, right? And interactive media is whenever we enter video game land. What if it's an interactive audiobook? Which one, I'm kind of curious, which one does it fall under now? Is that still do you know if that would live under interactive, or would that be new media? Because it's technically still radio play land.
Yeah,
multi-choice.
I don't have an answer specifically, but I know that they have multiple variations of these contracts, and rest assured they've thought about it. So if they have, they'll be able to plug you into the one that they require. Mm-hmm. Even though it might not answer all your questions, they're going to say, this is the contract. But basically the same things are going to happen. The numbers will just be different. Yeah. It's just it's a funky place. And also I was curious, I couldn't find, unless it's buried somewhere, and other people might want to know this, group recording sessions. If you're doing a group recording session, is everyone paid the equal amount of time under the new media contracts, or is it split some way? Is there any funky wording if you have an ensemble recording, such as, or does everyone still get that minimum $130 an hour per person? Okay. But and for an example of why I would ask, let's say you have a character who's in this group recording session, and this has come up in another chat before, and they maybe have 2 lines, and the other characters all have 450 lines in that hour. Is everyone still paid equally? No, there's a background actor price as well. The actor's fee is $130. The background actor, 98. It's 90. It's less than 100. Mm-hmm. So that's good. If you have a group that is doing the same task, nobody is necessarily taking most of the lines. Everybody could be a background actor. It just depends on how you do it. Yeah. Look, go do it. Make mistakes. It's okay. They'll just tell you, no, this actor does this or that does that. But really, for the most part, for our level of productions, they're not going to care. You know, you're going to agree to do this stuff, and then if by some chance your production gets audited or something, and they find these things, you just work with them and you say, look, I apologize. I wasn't trying to, put anything over on you. I just interpreted this line of the contract to mean this,
Yeah. But I think it's good. Like if I'm going to take over for a little bit, explaining from the non-union side, I've worked as a casting director and casting producer as well as a voice actor. And there's a lot of great takeaways here where if you are not in the union, that you should really put into contracts that you're forming with your client. For an example, I can't say the title, but one project I'm working on right now, I'm managing 3 voice actors for them as the casting, the directing person, and I produce the chops that they eventually clean on their end. And under my responsibilities that I have built into my contract with them is I log all the time, and I make sure the actors log all their time and report to me, so I know accurately how much time I've spent working with them and how much time they've spent in the booth. I think this counts under deferred pay, that in these cases, it's a smaller indie budget. As soon as the client pays me, my production company, then within a week, I pay my voice actors. So there's still that waiting for blah, but I am in direct communication, and I always alert them like, hey, the deposit's been made. And usually I know it's 2 weeks or so before the client pays me, because I built in my contract with the client that if it's more than 2 weeks, we start adding a fee. So I think currently it's like 20% on top of the current bill will slowly add up if they're late. So it's good to protect yourself if you're in that deferred payment for your talent position, to add that little fee clause. It is very effective, so that you're not stuck on the line with this agreement with your voice actors going, it's been 90 days, I still haven't heard from the client, I look like a mess now, sorry, to not look professional. Make sure that the direct tie, whoever it is, like you said, you have your production company people and the money people that are working for you, have that hook. So there's a deadline for that, so that your other deadline daisy chains in a way that is respectful and not making people wait for eternity.
And again, I would suggest holding aside a little bit of money of your budget and pay the company to take care of all this stuff for you.
It's always good, especially if you're in a position where you can have a buffer to save up to pay everyone for a month or so in case the world explodes.
Even if you're doing a right to work project, it's so handy. It takes away all of the responsibilities that you would have to do payroll yourself, unless you like to do that stuff.
I'm a one-person production company handling stuff, so QuickBooks is what I'm using right now.
I can't. It's not in my list of skill sets, and it is for you, Bonnie. So that's why.
Well, it didn't used to be. It's one of those things where, for an example, also from non-union and right to work, as I've been building up, I used to do mostly self-employment tax, etc., and treated myself as just a I always forgot, DAO, doing as business. What's that one called? You know what I'm talking about. The one where you have the
DBA.
The DBA. Thank you. So I was me, and my company's Black Hat Bonafide. So I was just DBA, Black Hat Bonafide. Checks go to both of us, right? But over the years, as I started hiring more contractors and stuff, I became an LLC. And in the past 2 years, now I'm an LLC that's taxed as an S Corp, which means I am an employee who gets a W-2 through the year, and any contractors, it makes it easier to send them 1099s. And part of that whole rigmarole ended up me going, I need to just have a payroll thing. So QuickBooks worked for me. It was a better way to sort all the invoices and keep track of everyone. If you are lucky enough to have the budget to get an accountant that works for you, awesome. But as soon as you can find a system that manages everything in a sane way, learn as much as you can about keeping it clean and not having a heart attack every year when tax reports come around. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to daisy chain off of you mentioned, like, the companies that you were working through, they help handle all the percentages and stuff that go out to SAG, the 18% and whatnot.
Everything.
In the right to work state, where I'm currently non-union, if I take on a union job I'm currently under the agency Call Your Talent, my agent helps process that form of the paperwork and is my connection. They become the intermediary. with SAG, and they handle those numbers. So luckily, if you're working under an agency, usually they're the ones that become that little side.
They take care of the lawyering.
They take care of the lawyering.
Yeah.
And make sure everybody's fairly taken care of, which is nice. But whew, I don't know. I feel like I talked a chunk. Is that helpful? Angie, do you want to jump in next?
Well, I would like to hear more about what you work in to protect yourself when you are, as a voice actor, these contracts. What specifics are you looking for to make sure that you are protected when you don't have that SAG contract?
Oh, yeah. So things like not being overworked for certain amounts of time. Game budgets are a little higher, like than the voice acting ones for books. Like at minimum, it's still like I think $200 min. Ideally, 2-hour recording session minimum per contract. If you do any shouting stuff, there's usually a clause built in, because in the game world, there's a lot of fight scenes and a lot of punching to push for higher rate in those cases. And usually those are line items. Also, establishing early on as you can how much retakes take, because I worry there's a lot of people working out there just taking any jobs they can, and they don't charge for retakes. Retakes, if a client has you do 1 hour of session work and then has you do 200 iterations after that wasn't already planned, but you just said, I'm working for a flat fee. When at all possible, build in you are working for the time you are in the booth. Flat rates usually don't work out good for anyone. I love that, like the SAG after stuff was all hourly and I didn't hear the flat rate thing spoken once. Yay. But be truthful to yourself on how much time will take, and be clear to your client whenever they're sending you a contract and it's coming back. If they expect revisions, how many do they expect? Make sure there's an item in it. Everyone agrees. Yeah, and protecting yourself as well with the payment thing. We talked about the deferred thing. When are you expecting to be paid? Do they even know when they might pay you? Make sure that's clearly spelled out in the contract. And what helped for me whenever I started going to business on my own, I actually worked with a small business lawyer. There's an attorney in town who works with a lot of people. She's great, called Emily Morris. I'd love to pimp her if any awesome people need someone. And she helped me develop a bunch of templates for contracts for my sound design business and also voice acting that cover a lot of those legalese areas. And it's kind of a template that I can plop in important bits as I go, so that you don't have to think about them later. And I can always take bits out if they're not relevant. If you all haven't started, if you don't have lawyer friends or anyone that can look at paperwork for you, I think that's a very important thing to start doing, just so you understand the verbiage. And then if a client comes back to you going, I don't understand line item 6-29 Roman numeral 45, you actually can translate it into normal human speak what it means. But that was one of the best and most important things I did when I started going pro, was have an actual attorney or lawyer help you create that documentation and cover as many instances as you think might come up in the type of things you're auditioning for. You don't ever want to write that contract after you've got the job. It's never as smooth of a process. You know what I mean? Like after you've been hired going, wait, now I want protection. Because then what they can do is put you in a hoop role of, oh, our lawyer's not available right now. Just keep working. Just keep working. Everything will be, you don't ever want to be in that bubble of, oh God, am I being screwed? You know what I mean? It's good to have as much upfront answered as you can.
It sounds like you have it sounds like you have sort of a living document though, that you can, as situations arise, you can add to it and then take away things that aren't applicable.
Especially like in my case, I do sound editing and voice and direction. So I have different chunks that apply to those different fields. And maybe if I'm just doing voice for someone, I know I only need blum, blum, blum. Or if I'm sound and voice, I go blum, 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 and so forth. And at least by now, like I can speak the language because it's all been translated into legal through my attorney. But I have had a case where they'll come back saying, I don't get, can you add a line item? And I'll go, oh man, yeah, I'd never thought 3 years ago to add that. And now my living document, which I keep saving, in various drafts, has new things that have come up that are great. It's really good if they actually bring you suggestions that are helpful. But But with games, there's rights things to worry about, making sure like if they say buyout, do they even know what it means? And making sure that that verbiage is clearly spelled. Like, are you going to be in television commercials with your voice from this game? Is it only going to be on YouTube? Is it paid advertising? A lot of that stuff that I think a lot of game producers and audio, other such producers might think is fuzzy and that we shouldn't worry about as the talent. You should be paid fairly if you suddenly end up as like this giant international commercial. Oh, that should be built into your contract text. But yeah, living documents. Yeah. And it's okay to have more than one version of a contract. If I didn't make that clear enough, like no one's going to go into your computer in the middle of the night and delete all your contracts. Custom them for the situation. And just understand what you're doing. So if someone asks you, you can explain what the heck it means. Mm-hmm. I talked a lot. Your turn.
That's good. Yeah.
Great. It's all great. Go, Angie.
Oh my goodness.
All right, I'm gonna jump. All right. So my perspective from audiobooks is a little bit more, I don't want to say limited, but it feels very, very privileged now after hearing Bonnie talk. When you're offered an audiobook from a publisher that is an a SAG-AFTRA signatory, you get the SAG-AFTRA rate whether you are part of the union or not. You can't do SAG-AFTRA audiobooks without being in the union forever, but you get some time to make that decision. The second aspect that's a little bit different for audiobooks is as of now, as of this morning, last time I checked my email, you can be in SAG-AFTRA and still do non-union audiobooks. It's not encouraged. I can go through a whole list of reasons why you may not want to, but they do not fall under Rule 1 as of this time.
Do you have to declare yourself FICOR to do that? Because I know in Gameverse, that's what they call it, is when you've been made to be in the union, you're now union, but you still want to take non-union, then you can be FICOR, which is limited access to a lot of stuff SAG can do, like you can't vote on board meetings and other such things. And I believe what I heard recently is you are not allowed to put I am SAG on your resume, even though you can work both sides, but you actually have to declare FICOR. Is that also the same in audiobook land?
Not for audiobooks yet. They're talking about changing that.
That means that says to me that they're losing a lot of actors to FICOR probably, and they don't want to anymore. I think provisions.
Part of why they didn't fall under Rule 1 automatically is that there's not one overreaching contract. Every audiobook producer has a different contract. So that changes the rules a little bit, but they're working on pulling that in.
That's a good point, because I know that Audible has a separate contract for some producers where there's a buyout number for actors. If you don't want to deal with residuals into the future, you would end up paying like your actors $500 a session instead of the 130, and then boom, call it a day.
Yeah, and then it becomes more like a game contract.
Yeah. And audiobooks also aren't charged per session. It's usually per finished hour. So once you edit out all the retakes and all of that, what's the total length? And you get paid by that. So what I saw with my first contract, where they said, we're going to pay you this much, and our contract says that we will add this percentage on for your health and pension for SAG-AFTRA. And I said, I'm not in the union. Well, you don't have to be. You can make that choice. I mean, again, they won't let you do it forever, but you can make that choice later. So when you start to see these numbers, first of all, you know you're getting a better rate than you would otherwise, because the union has been involved in negotiating with this company. So you kind of look at it, and there's sort of the noble part of the equation where you're thinking, oh, well, if I'm getting this benefit, I should contribute and be part of the bargaining process and all that. And then there's the monetary side of the issue, where you see this percentage that's been set aside for health and pension with your name on it, literally money with my name on it, that I couldn't access until I joined the union. So, and then you get in and you find out all these other benefits. Should I just go through like some of the list? Because everybody knows about the insurance, and it's huge. I can't get insurance through my husband's work. We were on an ACA, what's the word I want? An ACA plan. Switching to the union insurance, we were paying 1/3 as much per quarter as we had been paying per month. And it's better coverage. We have dental now. It's great. We can come back to insurance, circle back to it if people want to. There's a pension. How often do freelance artists get a pension? That's great. There are other things that people don't know about. There are workshops for professional development. There's part of, SAG-AFTRA is part of Union Plus. Well, they're not really connected. Union Plus is an organization that SAG-AFTRA members are able to participate in. My daughter is looking at potentially getting an associate's degree online for free through Union Plus because I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA. There's auto, homeowners, renters insurance that you can get through there, loans, scholarships for other colleges, other discounts for shopping, travel. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. There's a casting site through SAG-AFTRA, all sorts of benefits. It said that you can do non-union books, even if you are part of the union. I said I might talk about some of the reasons you might not want to. Looping back to the insurance, if you're on an ACA plan, if you make this much money, the government will cover this much of your insurance costs. And when your household income gets to this point, they cover this much. And it gets to this point, and they cover this much. You eventually get to a point where the government's not going to kick in anything. So that particular audiobook that you take in, losing my can, sorry, it might be the one to push you into the next tax bracket, and it's not contributing to your eligibility to get the SAG-AFTRA insurance. So that one book that maybe pays you $2,000 could end up costing you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Wow.
By the time you balance that out. That happened at our house. They said,
Wow.
Not only do you not get this discount anymore, you owe us for the months we kicked in last year. So we had to pay that back.
Ooh.
Just so you know.
Yeah, like, oh, I want to be a working actor, but only so much, just this much.
Yeah.
Just to the point. Yeah. Yeah. The protections in the SAG-AFTRA contracts. I'm doing fewer and fewer and fewer books that are not union contracts. Excuse me. I've only done 2 this year. One was scheduled way before. The other I recorded in January, and I still haven't been paid. If that were a union contract, I'd have other people. I mean, the very, very, very first union meeting I went to for the audiobook people, I knew immediately those people had my back. If you're in audiobooks, if you're even thinking about the union, contact Jane Love or Richard Larkin. Those people, they're great. And then the third kind of thing that's sort of, it's on the horizon, I'm not as worried about it as some people, is the idea of AI farming. Having your voice used by some of these AI things. Again, I'm not as worried about it as some people. If that happens to you from a project that was a union contract, I heard it out of Jane's mouth just this month, they will go as far as court or arbitration if they need to make sure you're compensated for that. If you're on your own, you're on your own. Can you even afford to hire a lawyer to do what you need to do for that? Anyway, I haven't talked as long, but I talked really fast. I think I spewed a lot.
Oh man, I am so glad you brought up the AI and the voice farming thing, because that is a growing concern. Because for any of us who in the audience we're actually at here now, the last time we were in person 2 years ago, we actually ended up we had a meeting. Were you there it was like 7 a.m. There was a suddenly put together discussion on the future of voice acting and the dangers of the AI revolution coming in, where a lot of people voiced, what are we going to do whenever the text to speech thing starts being crazy, and will human voices suddenly become the novelty instead of having a robot voice be the novelty? Well, we have to start labeling audiobook projects featuring the actual real voice of James Earl Jones or actually performed by a human. Because that is also a concern in the gameverse. And there's, I think we're all still in that end of things, trying to still figure out what verbiage goes into contracts to protect people. Mm-hmm. And it's part of the usage thing, is being very clear what all it's going to be used on, how long is it going to be used on, same as advertising. If your voice is in a commercial, is it national, international? Is it going to appear in different variations of the same thing? Is there a cutoff? And having the funds to get a lawyer, not everybody can do that. So it's a really good point. But the future is cool, but also very scary because of voice modulation, manipulation, and
I keep telling myself that the AI isn't going to get the joke. They're not going to know when it's hilarious to make the tattooed, pierced girl have a soft, sweet voice and when it's inappropriate.
It's the same thing with watching AI, the CG in a movie. You can tell when it's still, you can still tell when it's fake.
It's very odd. And I do say that if you ever are the person who's actually talking to the client and they come back at, oh, we're not going to hire voice actors for this part because we can just use a computer, that emotional thing that makes it actually sell is what's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. You're going to lose it. And especially in education, I'm on a job right now that I've actually it's repetitive work for the last couple of years, where originally they had all of this stuff going into a kid's game and it was all using built-in AI voice, and the kids had no connection to the characters. There was no positive or negative reinforcement. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't get a positive energy when you did something right or wrong. And as soon as they dropped a real human in, huge difference. And I was able to get a great continuous thing to narrate a ton of educational material because I spoke to them about the benefit of the human connection. So it's really great.
Good job, Bonnie.
But but sometimes you have to fight it because robots are cheaper, right? That's the answer. They're free. They're cheaper.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is where the union.
Sorry, go ahead. I could talk about that part forever.
This is where the union's a great thing. It'll protect actors in that way. They'll always be advocating for you. I don't know where you are, whoever's listening to this as an actor. I don't know where you are in your career or what you want to do. FICOR is right for you, or whatever. But this union takes care of you. I've been a member since 1988, and they have always taken care of me. They'll knock on my dressing room door. They'll just show up and say, hey, is everything okay? Is there anything that is going, you see if you might be holding something in as far as, anything going bad in the workplace.
There's actually a question that came through that falls into this, which might be a good time to bring it up since we're about 20 till now. Someone had asked, so like, how do you actually get into SAG these days? Is it still an invite process, or can anyone apply? How ... It's a bit confusing. And I can also concur that even people who work in Texas, a lot of us moved here because a lot of games are now hunting talent from Texas because they're trying to avoid union confusion, especially after there was a big blow up a couple of years ago of union contracts in the gameverse. If people like me want to be union and plan to then still be able to take, non-union contracts and stuff, what's the current process to get the invite? Is there even an invite anymore? Do you just go, hey, union?
Catch 22.
Yeah. You can't take I remember hearing what is it? You can't take a union job. You can't become in the union unless you've worked on a union project, but you can't do a union project unless you're already in the union.
Yeah.
Do one qualifying audiobook and you can be in.
Yeah.
So what makes that there's the question. What makes it a qualifying audiobook, etc.?
With a publisher that is a union signatory, that first book that qualified me. If you're still on ACX, for example, that first book that you make, it's currently $250 per finished hour or more on. If that's paid through a paymaster, that qualifies you. So, I mean, it sounds like it's less than I know screen actors have to go through. But, one audiobook can be 40, 60, 80 more hours of work. So it kind of sounds like a balance. But one qualifying audiobook and you can join.
Yeah. You have to work on signatory productions. So if you get one or two, if you work like something like 3 or 4 as a background actor, even in these signatory productions, you can get your union card. How I got mine is I got cast on a soap opera. I can just tell you my story. So once I was in, I had to join to keep that job.
And then
I happily did it.
And then here's the thing. So like if someone comes in, like Angie got in through the audiobooks things, what if she suddenly wanted to go into games or film or something else along the way? Once you hop into part of that SAG-brella, is all the points open? And then is location as well a factor? Like, are your dues going to shift based on where the job is?
I think the dues are based on where you are. I think.
I think I've heard in games it's the opposite, where the production is. But I've also heard it's wherever the studio that records is. So if you're recording in your physical studio, like where's the booth, right?
That could be where I get a significantly lower initiation fee than many people, because my little booth is in Southern Indiana,
right?
And that's where I'm recording from. The rates will vary for the initial buy-in to join.
Yeah, because I believe I remember someone mentioning that, let's say you join inside of Texas and your dues are cheaper than they would be in LA, but then if you suddenly relocate to LA, there's a track record of, well, now that you live here, you actually owe more on the back end from what your dues would have been. So it's like, is there just a running log? But then if you move back again, like let's say you were Pennsylvania, you moved to LA, and then will they shrink them and then bring them back? Is there?
They'll never shrink anything.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
And that's not something that I'm familiar with, but if you're planning to move, it'd be worth researching.
I don't know anything about this, but Angie, what are your dues, your yearly dues?
Well, see, the yearly dues are based on what I earned last year. So off the top of my head, I can't tell you. The years I don't earn much, I don't pay as much the next year.
Yeah.
Is it like a percentage thing of just?
Percentage of qualifying work.
I think mine last year was like $261.
Is that for the whole year or just the half? Okay, that sounds like the neighborhood. It's not bad. That initial initiation fee hurts a little bit, but the dues are not bad.
Yeah, and especially like me, I worked a ton in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I have a pension waiting for me based on that. And I keep adding to here and there, but not as much as I worked back then. Mm-hmm. So it behooves me to keep my dues paid up and stay in
money with your name on it, literally.
Right. Okay, do we have any other questions here?
I think there was one a little bit ago. What are some red flags to look out for when signing a contract with a new client? I know I already touched on my worry of make sure the usage is defined, whatever it is, and also the one about the deferred pay, which originally Mike brought up, of when will the money come in and how will you know when it's coming? Being clear.
Question being asked by an actor or by a producer?
Unclear. I guess we can approach it from both sides.
Yeah. Well, if I'm signing an actor, I have to go by the contract that that SAG gives me, and basically there's a blank spot for the pay that I'm going to pay you, and then there's a blank spot for where you initial that. And so that's negotiated. If you are an actor that tells me that I can't do it unless it's for this price, this number, because that $130 is just your base price.
It's just the minimum.
Just the minimum. But if you're savvy enough to negotiate a higher price, then that goes on that line that you guys both negotiated, and that's it. That's the contract. There's no fancy contract that the producer can make you sign, really. The contract you're signing with an actor, SAG provides it, if that answers your question. Doesn't hurt to ask, right? If you ever talk to a producer and they say, we want to hire you, or a director or whatever, and what are you paying? Well, I'm paying the minimum. And you say, well, my quote is double the minimum or $1,000 or whatever. Usually the producer will come back to you and say, well, I'm paying all these other actors this, and I only have it budgeted for that. And usually they say that, but if they want you, they'll pay more, rest assured.
And it's good to clarify, because I've seen this happen both ways, where they don't people or the client might not understand what the per hour is. Is it the finished product per hour, or is it the time in the booth per hour? And it's really good to make sure both sides understand in any contract what that means, because they're very different. Yes,
yeah. And that's cut and dry with the union, and it's not. If you're working in a right to work state, they can have you in there as long as they want.
That's why I said, like, when possible, always fight for what time you're in that booth doing physical work. That's what you're paid for. Because again, if they ask for you to do 1 million retakes and the expected 30-minute session becomes 3 hours, be paid for your time. Don't get taken advantage of if you can help it. Or put a cap on it, say, well, we'll work up to this amount, but after you've hit so many revisions, we have to add an additional contract to cover whatever time at this, retake rate. But if none of that's spelled out, or it's ever fuzzy, I always say, if something's fuzzy or you're not sure, hope they're not hiding it. Always benefit of doubt, right? You always hope the client's not evil, but if it's missing, be clear before you sign anything, for the dotted line.
And I will say, for the union contracts, Mike, as he says, it's already lined out. Your protections are in there. It's all there. They fill in the amount, you sign it. If you find that there's something that needs to be in there that's not, let the union know. And they will, in future contracts, make sure that's there.
That's a great point. These contracts are all constantly being revised. These are based on, really quick, if I may, this may take a minute or two. But SAG is the Screen Actors Guild. AFTRA is the radio and recorded arts. And they joined in the last 15 years or so. And now they are one. They used to be separate. And that means SAG is for movie actors only. AFTRA was for me. I had to join as an AFTRA union member first, because it covered television, all television actors and everything, because they were just completely separate worlds. So now they're joined, and these contracts are based on, like, the new media contract is based on the SAG ultra low budget film contract, which would be like, if you're making a film for less than $25,000, or you're making a film for, there's tiers. And they joined that with the old AFTRA radio contracts from like the 1930s and 40s, the audio drama contracts that they created back then. So they joined these, and the words didn't mesh for a dozen years, but they're finally getting it banged out. And also, once they do, the producers come back to the next collective bargaining session, and they're like, you guys, this is great. Thank you for doing all the work. I don't know if they say thank you, but you're still not meeting our needs, because this technology is changing so much. What about YouTube? What about Audible? What about I'm going to put it on my own website? What about this stuff? And then they're revising this stuff all the time. So if you ever do have, like what Angie says, that they need to hear from us. If you ever have a suggestion, make it heard. You can call your union rep and explain.
We got our 10-minute warning. One thing I did notice, which I'm glad to see these days, is the new media section on the SAG website. It's actually broken down by budgets. If I just list the ones that are visible right now, there's the normal new media, there's a moderate low budget, there's a ultra low budget, and a micro budget. So they've actually tried to do better to accommodate productions that may not have the $7 million or billions of dollars and might be working more shoestring, but they're trying to make it easier for independent producers to be able to handle more situations fairly.
Yeah.
Because not everyone has the same big bundle of money to work from.
Yeah. And say you want to try it as a producer. You're like, oh, I'm going to work with SAG-AFTRA on this one. And then you decide, after that, you're like, okay, I did that. I think that I can go back to being a right to work state producer instead and go back to doing that. You can give it a try and see what happens. Once you work with, SAG-AFTRA, it's not like, you're beholden to that at any time. You will find, I think, that it will level you up as a quality producer. All these things, they have the whole thing structured for you to follow. And it's like you're plugging right into infrastructure.
They try to make it easy. They don't want it to be difficult. They want it to be easy for you.
Yeah. And call, if you ever have any questions, call SAG. Just call, get on the phone and talk to anybody. I like to call, even though I'm in Los Angeles, I like to call Chicago SAG because they always answer my phone call.
That's a good point, because they probably have less constant production going on by comparison.
But for whatever reason, yeah. What's his name? The guy's name, Sean Hennessy. I talked with Sean Hennessy in Chicago, and yeah, I'll just call and ask questions about things. Like, hey, I'm thinking about getting started on a production. What do I do? Where do I go? Can you send me the contracts to look over, the basic contract and the packets and whatnot, and they'll help you.
Oh, I have a budget question that. So whenever you're trying to quote things to people, I know that in the game verse and in some more indie interactive projects, we've been sharing around, like, there's the Global Voice Academy rate guide actually references both the current union and non-union rates for everything from broadcast and entertainment to dubbing and audiobooks and stuff. Do you recommend people use that? Or is there a more easy to find, fully accessible rate sheet that you usually go to that you point people to if they're just trying to run numbers and know how much fair pay should be currently for different areas?
When I'm budgeting?
Mm-hmm. Or when a client wants to do a thing and they're like, where can I go to see how much just in general things cost? Where would you send them? What is your process for that?
Well, you know what? There's a SAG. There's a audio drama budgeting seminar going on. Is it today? Later, 4:00?
That's a good side pimp. So I have it in front of me. So folks, if you want to learn more about budgeting for audio fiction specifically, at 6 p.m. today, we have a panel about that at Here Now.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm going to listen to that one for sure, because
I'm definitely going to be around for that one. That's a good reminder. My brain kept thinking that was tomorrow, but it is today, Saturday at Here Now.
Yeah, Casey Whalen is doing that with Jude Kempner, I think, and Casey is top shelf. He's the Steven Spielberg of what we do in America, at least right now.
Yeah,
he's, as far as that budgeting, those questions should be, for him. No, for the Only Pilot Experiment, I just used the SAG number, $130. I told people, I said, this is what I have, you guys. Really, we did it on a shoestring. Mm-hmm. And all the actors, agreed. And we did it in a right to work state. We did it in Indiana.
Oh,
well, I'm in Indiana. I can vouch. Yeah, that's true.
Angie is in our show.
Expertise.
But I still wanted to do it because I wanted to learn. I'm a SAG actor, but I wanted to learn as a producer because I'm on my way to level up. I want to level up as a producer, and so I needed to get in and learn the ropes, and I did. I taught myself the ropes. But at the same time, I still would have paid the actors that amount of money, even if it was a right to work thing. I would have
paid
money for them. I'm an actor myself. You got to pay the musicians, man.
Exactly.
And it's appreciated.
Yes. And I do think, I hope they cover later too. If you're currently working on productions and you're thinking about making them budgeted, always have that in mind as an end goal. Because if people always work for free, sadly, you usually get what you pay for. And whether that be your actors will drop or ghost you, because paid work is more important. And you won't always be the friends with the people that you think you are now and be always willing to work 7 million hours for them without ever reaping the benefits. So,
I had a boss once who said that you don't always get what you pay for, but you never get what you don't pay for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's always true, but it carries through a lot.
There's another question that just popped up on our. Can you read that one? What is that?
What do you think will be the future of SAG contracts for audio only productions once they've built enough traction and popularity and significance in media? Will they always be new media? And this is one of those things where I have to tell it to wrap the text. Hold, please. Will they always be under new media and the details stay the same, or will they shift to become their own thing? I think that kind of goes off of my earlier point of what if you're working on interactive audio dramas, which are technically games, but they're also audio dramas, and how they're done. Will there be a new blob? Do you know? Is a new blob coming?
It's always shifting. It'll always be shifting going forward. There is no more industry standard on these contracts like they were. Like I said, it used to be film contracts and television contracts. And it was it. There are so many contracts now. Yeah. And that's why there's amendments being made, because they're constantly changing, and with producers' new needs, with actors' new needs. But yeah, I think they'll always be called new media, because
it covers a lot.
Covers a lot.
Well, because I mean, interactive currently, as far as the SAG website is still the only one that has video games or gaming listed in the description. So that's where it's like, will the verbiage need to start shifting to also allow? Because I do think on the new media area, is it new media? We're talking about audiobooks is new media, right? And interactive is gaming. The new media doesn't really have a comma, what is entailed under it. It's like the interactive part says games, but new media is like new media, you know, all the other stuff.
I would assume that interactive is under new media contract. They would that is the umbrella. This is.
I wish it was.
No?
I feel like if they ever restructure, I do hope interactive gets placed in there, because there's so much crossover. It feels like that's the spot for it. And I can't tell if I'm remembering this correctly. I was at Game Sound Con a couple of years ago, and I believe that's when the interactive thing started being pimped heavily. And they actually have started a lower budget tier for interactive, because you'll have your quadruple billion-dollar game budgets, but you'll also have the indie budgets. It doesn't look like that's spelled out as much yet on the website though. Like I don't see it, but I know that was becoming a new thing, because they liked the model that the new media guys did of the low budget, micro low budget, etc. Because you'll have AAA games, indie games, hobbyist games that all still want proper contracts and to be, paying their people fairly.
This is a situation where it might be good to call them and find out where the overlap may happen, and is it evolving to perhaps more overlap is going to happen in the future.
Yeah. It
might be shifting.
And I will say, like, because there's actually in 1 hour, I'll pimp another panel. At 1 p.m., there's a panel called Earplay and Friends, Making Audio Theater Interactive with Voice. I'm actually on that one with some of my colleagues. And we're going to be talking about working on games that are developed for the Amazon Echo and Google Home and other things, especially in the quarantine era we've been in. There's been a lot of audio only games to keep us from going mad, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. Like, it's not going away. So as that becomes more the norm, I do hope there will be more evolution and more people asking folks like SAG to clarify better how to handle this crazy new trend that people love, because they love audio drama and they love interactivity.
Well, it's 10:01.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is
in California. Sorry. It is 12:01. So I suppose we should sign off.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
I know I learned a lot, so I hope everybody else did too.
Yeah, I love that we could bounce our own questions off each other too. The three of us all learned as well. But yeah, check out the budgeting panel later today, everyone, and the interactive audio fiction panel, and enjoy here now.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, all.
I think recording stopped. That is an AI